What's up, guys? This is Nick from Arch City Poker, and in today's video, we'll be continuing the poker hand review series with today's topic covering one no-limit hold'em hand and one PLO hand. And I think that's how it's going to go for each video that I make each week for this series. I feel like I've been neglecting PLO hands a little bit. I want to get at least a hand of that in per week and no limit, so I'm just going to do one each, and I think that will be nice for the players that want no limit, the players that want PLO, and the players that maybe want both. So let's get right into the first hand, which is going to be a no limit hand, and I'm going to try to go through these pretty quickly. The player on the button, he opens to 3x in a live 2-5 game, and yeah, Snowy's telling me that I should be 3-betting this 100% of the time. I think that you can mix in some flats on the big blind. I tend to flat a little more from the big blind when I'm closing the action, just really for that reason. I tend to only 3-bet from the small blind, just so I can discourage the big blind from continuing, and it's going to be tough to play from the small blind out of position against multiple players, so I think flatting from the big blind sometimes with a combo like this is fine. I will say that I probably will 3-bet this most of the time, pretty much almost every time. But this time I did decide to mix it up, and I had been mixing it up with this player. I have a lot of history with this player. He's pretty loose. So I go ahead and flat. And the flop comes king, queen, deuce, a flop that I think a lot of you guys that are starting to understand range advantage would think that he has a massive range advantage on. Now, yes, would I raise most of my better kings, better queens, king, queen, my sets here, or my hands that would make sets such as kings and queens? Yes. However, his button opening range is going to be much wider compared to, let's say, like his under the gun opening range. So even though it's more likely that he has hands like sets and ace king, king queen, he's still going to be really wide in this spot. And how you guys go about playing a hand and attacking an opponent, and this is going to be a very important video as far as this goes, is you have to understand how their range is, or how their betting range is really constructed in this spot. And I'll show you guys in PO a little bit more what I mean, but let's go through the action real quick and then we'll get to PO. So he checks, or I'm sorry, I check, he fires half pot, and I decide to raise him to 50. And I'm going to get into that in a second, PO, like I said, but I think he's very merged in this spot. I think that my hand's a little too weak to call, but I think that it's a nice bluffing candidate. So I do go ahead and raise, and he ends up flatting the raise. He gets pretty sticky in these spots, and I think even overly sticky. Turns a nine of spades, which is a nice card because I think a lot of my bluffing combos are like Jack 10. I think a lot of my made hands are still very nice on this turn. For my actual combo, I do pick up some good bluffing equity. And so I pretty much fire about pot, and he ends up folding. So let's get into the actual analysis of this hand. So this is PO. If you guys haven't seen any of my videos using PO Solver, it's a very nice piece of software. It's a GTO solver essentially. So as you guys can see, the flop texture there, and out of position is going to be me. I did put in for me to have the ability to donk bet into him, and this might not be exactly what I would do it with, but I do think I would do this more often than not, and players would not consider this in this spot. But he is so wide on the button that I think you can balance some value bets with some bluffs and really make yourself tough to play against. So definitely look into that a little bit more and consider what hands you should be donking here, and maybe donking at all, because I know a lot of you guys just automatically check to the razor. I do go ahead and check in this spot, playing check raise. Now, this is what's interesting is PO has him betting about 44% of the time here. And if I didn't have myself having the ability to donk bet, I think it was even lower facing that kind of strategy that I'm implementing. He would be betting even lower than this, or he's supposed to be. Players in this spot, though, they just assume that, hey, the big blind called me, he's really wide, I'm the pre-flop raiser, I'm going to show strength, and they bet a very merged range. They won't bet hands that, like this looks more polarized, as you guys can tell. These are going to be combos that are near the top of his range, like King X plus, and then he's going to have combos that are a little bit more near the bottom, obviously. I think a lot of opponents, though, are going to be betting combos in here, and they shouldn't really be betting them at all, but I do think that you see them betting here just to bet because they don't think they have showdown value, and they think that my range on the big blind is really wide. The problem that they put them, or the problem that really occurs for them in a situation that they put themselves in, is when they bet really merged like this, they open themselves up to a check raise. And if I changed it, if I changed the strategy to where I actually have him betting, I think that would take too long for the sake of this video, but you guys would see my raise percentage increase my raising frequency percentage would increase tremendously. And he really would put himself in a tough spot. I could raise more hands for value. I could raise more hands for bluffs. And it's going to be really difficult for him to continue on a lot of runouts. So I do think he's more merged in this spot and just firing with a lot of different kinds of combos. I think that ace-deuce suit, as you guys can see according to PO, I think Snowy suggests a mix, but Snowy suggests that based on your opponent playing very optimally. And I think that even though PO has my opponent playing pretty optimally here, I think that this combo works much better as a check raise. I just think that I can definitely rep some good King X hands. I will be flatting some hands like King Queen every now and then out of the big blind. So I think it's just a matter of not so much about my actual combo, but I can rep some good value hands, and I'm really just attacking his really wide and merged range. And it's going to put him in a really tough spot on future runouts. So he does go ahead and call. And on the 9 of spades, you guys can see that I'm pretty much betting my ace-deuce of spades most of the time. And other combos will be my made hands, like my straights, as you guys can see here, my King X combos that are a little more nuttish or have a nut draw with them. I'm betting those in a more polarized sense. I'm going to balance my checking on the turn here after my check raise on the flop with checking some of these King X hands, because I will want to check sometimes on, let's say, like a 5 of spades, where I don't think it hits my range quite as hard and I don't have as much fold equity. I will want to be checking these weaker spade draws a little more often and check calling. It's not a bad hand to have in your check calling range after you check raise, just because you want to be able to show up on the river with some completed nuttish draw hands like that sometimes. So it's just a matter of balance with the right opponents. But I do think this is very interesting just to talk about how, even though he's the pre-flop raiser, he's just going to be so wide, and his betting range is going to be constructed of a lot of combos, a wide merged range, which allows me to raise him much more often and put him in tough spots. So interesting no limit hand, and I hope you guys found it valuable. Just let me know if you have any questions about it. Let's get into the PLO hand real quick here. So this was a live 2-2 hand. There were 3 limps to me in the button, and I have 7-6-5-5, a hand that I think plays much better heads up as opposed to multi-way. I may not be expecting all these guys to fold right away, but I do think that if there's a chance of thinning out the field and getting maybe 1 caller or 2 callers, it's better than getting pretty much 5. And I think we were more than 6-handed at this point, but it doesn't really matter for the sake of the video. You guys will see here. So I do go ahead and pot it to 14, and the under the gun limper calls, the under the gun +1 limper folds, and very weird and out of nowhere, the cutoff pots it to 62. He is an older gentleman. He seems kind of like a PLO novice. I think this is almost always going to be ace-ace combos. I don't think it's going to be anything but that. Maybe a very small percentage of the time he has a hand like double suited kings, or maybe like queen jack 10-9 double suit, but I highly doubt it. I think this is always ace-ace pretty much every time. So what you guys have to determine here is, the thing in PLO is my hand against an ace-ace hand is obviously very much behind, but it's not as, I guess, behind as you would think it would be. And I would use the peel and stack off function to show you how profitable peeling this bet is and seeing the flop. However, I can't do it due to this player being in the hand. So I can still show you guys, though, that because I think this limp caller is very weak and is going to fold here pretty much almost every time, and I knew this opponent, I think he would, it's essentially going to, I'm getting 2-to-1 on my money. It's going to be 48 to win 96 immediately plus implied odds. So if we're going on just the immediate 2-to-1, I need about 33% equity. So you guys will see here that once the other opponent folds, and I don't want to get heads up yet, so let's see if this will reset here. And you guys will see that I have about almost 40% equity in this spot. And this is the thing about PLO, is you just have a lot more equity than you think you do. Now, I'm not saying to call every single 3-bet from every single opponent that you know has only ace-ace. But the nice thing about this hand is I'm getting a good price. It's definitely profitable to peel and see the flop. The other thing about this is I have really good visibility with this hand. I know exactly what I'm trying to avoid. I know what kind of flops I can stack off on. With the SPR being only about 1.5, I can pretty much stack off on any flop that I hit anything on. This is going to be one of them. If my opponent pots it here, I can get it in knowing that I need, according to my software, and this is good to have this kind of thing, 38% equity to stack off with to basically break even when I go all in. I have more than that, as you guys can see. Pair, gutter, backdoor hearts. This will be more than enough, even against what I know is an ace-ace heavy range. Now, what was interesting about this hand is my opponent went ahead and checked it. If he's going to let me see a free card, then I guess I'm going to take one, which was very interesting to me. And the 4 spades came, pretty much wrapping this hand up. He checks, I pot it, he gets it all in, and is very surprised to see that I have a straight. Funny enough, I also river one of the remaining 5s, but he did have a pretty trashy ace-ace hand. It was like ace-ace 8 something, I believe. I don't think he didn't make a straight or anything. So a very disconnected and trashy ace-ace hand. But the point of this video was, or this hand was to show you guys that pre-flop, you just need to determine, or you really need to know your math and know poker math pretty well. I know that I'm going to be getting 2-1 here. I know that I'm going to be close to 40% against any kind of ace-ace hand, albeit the unlucky, if he has like ace-ace with hearts, that could definitely make it a little closer. But I do have great visibility, and I'm going to see a lot of flops that I can stack off on. And it's not the greatest spot in the world, but it's a profitable spot. So if you guys have any questions or comments about either of these hands, go ahead and let me know. Until next time, this is Nick from Arch City Poker. Take care.